Welcome, Off-Season After Dark fans. Glad to have you for episode 58 and bringing you an episode I've been excited to do for a while. We have Tyler here from Locked On Irish to, spoiler alert, talk about the team that I think will win the national title this year. So in our group, we've talked about that a few times and, doing our predictions and whatnot. So, Tyler, glad to have you. Obviously, Locked On Irish, so you all out there can find him the same place you find Corey and Steve and all their Locked On Network associates. But Tyler, as the season is upon us starting, I imagine expectations couldn't be much higher for you guys, and the promise is there. So what's the feeling around the Irish right now? Am I right about that?
At this point, it's probably just anxiety for the season to start.
Okay.
I think the expectations are, like you said, they're extremely high, and this team has been waiting to get back out there on the football field since last November. This has been quite literally the longest offseason in Notre Dame football history, at least during my lifetime. So the team is ready to go. They're amped up. They can't wait to get out there and play again. I think the fan base is just ready to watch this team play football again because it's been so long, and we've spent so much time in the offseason talking about how last season ended, how differently things could have gone, how they might have missed out on a chance to potentially win a national championship last year. So they have all the pieces in place now, but they actually have to go out there and do it, and we still just have to wait just a few more days.
It's funny you say that because I was talking about that, a related thing with a guy a couple days ago, and it's how off-season cycles and storylines can come into play and then disappear. Like should Notre Dame have made the playoff last year, and then the fallout from opting out of a bowl game. We've all forgotten about that. It's like it was a big thing at the time. Nobody outside of, your fan base, like you mentioned the point of it's been a long off-season, but everywhere else, we've moved on. It's what are the Irish going to be like in 2026? What is everybody going to be like now? Who's going to go to the playoffs? So I think a good place to start for us there would be coaching. I usually start with the coaching staff. I want to do the same with you. Fortunate in that, obviously, Marcus Freeman is back, but the coordinators are also back. So let's, Mike Denbrock is a guy very famous, famous and known to our viewers, a lot of whom remembered him from his time at LSU. Offensively, should we expect many changes this year from what we saw last year?
I think they're going to pass a lot more. CJ Carr, I think, was in the 80s in terms of total pass attempts last season, but when he did throw, he was pretty efficient. They leaned on Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price, as you should if you have two future first-round running backs on the team.
Absolutely.
So they're still going to run the ball. Notre Dame has always run the ball, and that's not going to change with Mike Denbrock, and I think they have the running backs this year to do it, specifically Aeneas Williams. But
yes.
I think the difference is the amount of trust that Mike Denbrock has in CJ Carr to get the offense in the right checks, get in the right play based on what the defense is showing. And that's pretty rare for a college quarterback, especially one who's only started one full season. But Mike Denbrock said they're working to make sure that Carr has basically the entire playbook at his disposal when he gets to the line of scrimmage. So from big picture,
that shows a lot of faith and trust.
Yeah, no doubt. But Carr's football IQ is extremely high. Grandson of Lloyd Carr. He's been born and raised in a football family. So it's not a surprise that he really understands the game. But I think he is so far ahead most college quarterbacks in that respect. So the offense is going to be built around CJ Carr now as opposed to the running backs. And I think with that, you're going to see a lot more passing and potentially downfield passing as well because CJ Carr likes to chuck the ball a little bit.
He does, yes. And you had brought up a point that I was going to, echo before that. In terms of numbers, didn't throw the ball a ton, but he was efficient at it. And he did take, if you look at the ADOT, there are deep shots, mixed in there pretty regularly. So that's very good point. So let's look at his pass catcher. So Jordan Faison is back. Then it's about the only position you guys brought in meaningful transfers through the portal this year. Both Quincy Porter and Mylan Graham came over from Ohio State. Are you looking at them to be starters? Will Greathouse start. We've seen him play a lot of football before. And then Micah Gilbert is another guy that I think is interesting, to see what he could bring to the team. So what's that receiver room looking like now?
Unfortunately, Quincy Porter is going to be out for the foreseeable future. He's still recovering from an off-season surgery that he had way back in January, and
I knew he had the surgery. I did not. Like, there was the red flag by him. I didn't know that was still active. Okay.
Yeah, the Notre Dame coaching staff wouldn't say this publicly, but I think privately they would say that they're a little bit disappointed in his progress right now. And there were some questions about the injury to begin with. It wasn't like very cut and dry. It wasn't like, hey, he has torn ACL, he's going to get reconstruction surgery, he'll be back in 9 months. There were some lingering questions about what exactly is the problem, the severity, all that stuff. So he's not going to be out there for Wisconsin. I honestly have my doubts if we'll see him at all this season, which would obviously be very disappointing for Notre Dame. Now, for Mylan Graham, he is supremely talented.
Yep.
That was on display in spring practice. He just looks different when he's out there. He's extremely twitchy, explosive, had a great spring practice, really impressed in the summer. I believe during camp it was a little bit up and down for him, so he is probably not going to be in the first group of receivers out there because it's going to be Micah Gilbert in the boundary, Jordan Faison is the field wide receiver, and then Jane Greathouse starting in the slot. But Mylan Graham can come in. He can play the field and the slot. He's going to rotate heavily. So even if he's not technically a starter against Wisconsin, you're going to see him get starter-level snaps. I think for him, as the season goes on, he'll become more of a factor in this offense. But they're going to lean heavily on Jordan Faison and Jane Greathouse. Jordan Faison was a team leader in receptions and receiving yards last season. He's not your traditional wide receiver one. Doesn't look like Jeremiah Smith or Cam Coleman, but he's just always open. He's a great route runner. He's extremely elusive. So if he's open, CJ Carr is going to find him, and I think Jaden Greathouse is going to have a big bounce back here after he missed the last 8 games of last season with an injury. So 2 familiar faces, some new ones, but I think they have faith in that receiving core.
I didn't realize he missed that many games last year. I was, if you'd have asked me, I would have guessed it was 4, maybe 5. I didn't realize it was nearly that many. But yeah, I had over 40 catches the year before. So now at tight end, and very few teams in the country have produced better tight ends than you guys have in the last decade plus. Will Cooper Flanagan be the main guy at tight end?
Yeah, he's going to be the main guy at tight end. He's not as good of a pass catcher as guys like Tyler Eifert, Kyle Rudolph, but he is a very, very good blocker, and Notre Dame really missed him last season. They had Eli Raridon. They had a really strong tight end one. Eli Raridon was a solid blocker. Cooper Flanagan is like a dog blocker, so they're going to bring him in, and I think he'll really contribute in like short yardage situations, and it'll allow Notre Dame to run around the edges a little bit. I think he can surprise some people with his pass catching ability. So, Cooper Flanagan would be a really solid starter on a bunch of teams. I think some Notre Dame fans are a little bit underwhelmed with him right now because he hasn't done a lot as a receiver yet, but I think he is so important to this offense, but his skill set is just a little bit underrated compared to some of the flashier guys.
That also might be a little spoiled by the past, too, and guys you've had in recent years. And when you guys do go 12 personnel, will James Flanagan be the second tight end?
James Flanagan will be the second tight end, at least to start the year. They have a 5-star freshman in Ian Premer who is 6'6". He has arms that basically touch his ankles. He is a very, very good pass catcher and a freak athlete. But Mike Denbrock, the offensive coordinator, said that sometimes when Ian gets to the line of scrimmage, he looks lost. And if that's the case, the coaching staff is not going to trust him to put him out there. But I think as the season goes on, he's going to get more comfortable, and they're going to start throwing the ball his way because he's just different than all the other guys.
I think he was a Kansas City area guy, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, he's from Kansas.
Yeah. Now, you had mentioned the running backs. Aeneas Williams, who will probably be that lead guy. Nolan James, also a guy we'll see get some carries. There's a lot to replace. I mean, it's not very often you have to replace 2 running backs that are drafted that high. It's extremely rare. But I think you also brought up the great point earlier on in that it's not going to be a like for like. They're going to throw the ball more and do different things. It's not going to be an identical offense to what we saw last year. So in looking at running backs, you're focusing on Williams, who will be the main guy. What kind of back is he? For our listeners out there, is he going to be more like Love, more like Price? what is his skill set going to be like for us?
He looks kind of like a bigger body running back. He's not the tallest guy. He's probably like 5'9.5", 5'10", but he just looks
he's
like
thick.
a bowling ball.
Yeah.
He's a thick guy, but his superpower, honestly, is his ability to catch passes. He came in as a freshman and on a team that had Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price and ultimately made it to the national championship game. Aeneas Williams was getting reps because at the time, Notre Dame had Dylan McCullough as the running backs coach, and McCullough liked to rotate a bunch of different guys in. So even as a true freshman, Aeneas Williams was basically the third down back because not only could he catch passes really well out of the backfield, he was also elite in pass protection, which is super rare, especially for a true freshman running back to be able to do that. So he's really effective in that way. And if you think back to that Penn State game, where Notre Dame got the ball to start the second half, they're down a touchdown. Aeneas Williams made the biggest play on that drive. He ran a wheel route out of the backfield. Riley Leonard hit him down the sideline, and it was like a 35-yard difficult catch, like over the other shoulder, so he had to like catch it in a just a really tough way that some college receivers struggled to do, and he made that play in a very critical point during a playoff game. Then last year, Notre Dame gets a new running backs coach, Jaywan Sider, who looked at the room and was like, hold on, we have Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price. They're never coming off the field. So then Aeneas Williams barely played at all as a sophomore. So now it's his time. It's his room. He is going to be the lead back, and I think he's extremely confident, and I believe that the college football world is going to learn the name Aeneas Williams here very soon.
So Sider, interesting enough, most of our viewers know I'm a professor at Marshall for the day job. He was the coach here about a decade ago. So Juwan was, yeah. And I'm glad you gave the shout out to McCullough. I was actually talking about him recently, just because it was, new coaches and whatnot. And he, after being in the NFL last year, is with Oklahoma this year. Yeah. So running back coach for the Sooners, him, and then Al Washington was the other one that popped up now with the Dolphins. So,
That's right.
Yeah. But O-line wise, another position you guys have excelled at for a long time. A guy that I wanted to ask you about, obviously, being a massive recruit, but a guy we haven't seen play much yet. Will Black, originally from Canada, went to prep school in the Northeast. The depth charts I looked at projected him as that starter at left tackle. Massively important, protecting CJ Carr. Will Will Black be the starter at left tackle? B, what can we expect from him?
He's definitely going to be the starter at left tackle, and I think the expectations for him are really high. And all you really have to do to sort of understand why I think Will Black is going to hit the ground running as a left tackle is because for the last 2 years, Notre Dame has had Anthony Knapp as the starter at left tackle. He was basically thrust into the role as a true freshman due to necessity because Charles Jagasaw tore his pec during fall camp, and he was going to be the starting left tackle.
Yeah.
And then Anthony Knapp beat out a fifth-year senior at the time to then become the starting left tackle, and a bunch of people had questions about that because he wasn't even projected to be a tackle coming out of high school. He did great as a true freshman and then started there every game last season, was one of the best linemen on the team. So you would think they'd be like, all right, well, we'll just keep him here one more year. He already has 2 years of experience. No, instead, they moved him to guard, and they said, Will Black is more suited to play left tackle. He's extremely talented. He looks like he has all the traits to be a left tackle. So the fact that they felt comfortable moving an established player from a very premium position inside, I think tells you all you need to know about the staff's confidence in Will Black.
It also tells me they're looking out for their guys' long-term future and sustainability, because Knapp is a guard at the next level.
No doubt.
This probably gets him more looks at the NFL. Not that that's going to be secondary to you being a championship.
No, but it plays a part, though. You're right.
Absolutely, but it tells me that the coaches are looking out for their guys, and that's always good to see.
Yeah, I agree.
Ashton Craig at center, he has impressed before. The right guard position was one, is it Jagasaw? I didn't know how to pronounce the name.
Jagasaw. Yeah.
Okay, him and Sullivan Absher were the two that I had seen. Each depth chart had one of them starting there. I didn't know. Who will it be at right guard?
Charles Jagasaw is still recovering from an injury that he suffered 4th of July weekend of 2025.
Oh my gosh.
I am skeptical if he's going to play this season. It's a really freak injury. He was driving around an ATV, got in a nasty crash, and had an open fracture in his right arm. And then I think he's undergone 6 different procedures since then. He's dealt with nerve damage. He has dealt with just a litany of issues stemming from the original accident. So he is still not even close to being ready to play football, but it is not necessarily a given that Sullivan Absher is going to start there either.
Okay.
So Ashton Craig is coming back from an injury that he suffered last season. He tore his ACL against NC State. So Joe Otting replaced him at center, and then eventually Sullivan Absher had to replace Billy Stroud because Notre Dame lost 2 starters in the offensive line. Well, Joe Otting did so well at center that he might end up staying there, starting for this Notre Dame offensive line, and then they could move Ashton Craig to right guard. So Joe Rudolph, the Notre Dame offensive line coach, is one of those guys who is all about getting his 5 best guys on the field, figure out positions later. So he is not afraid to make a move, even though Ashton Craig has played center throughout his entire college career up to this point, to move him over to right guard. And as of this conversation, I believe that battle is ongoing. So Notre Dame is supposed to release a depth chart next week. We'll find out if they have come to an answer there at who's going to start at right guard. But it could be Sullivan Absher. It could be Ashton Craig. Who knows at this point?
I appreciate that. That's I didn't know about that Craig may move to guard. That was one that
that's like a recent development. That's like a new thing during this training camp.
It makes sense though, keeping Otting at center where he did succeed at. So I get that. Now, let's move over to defensive side of the ball. Chris Ash returns for his second year at D coordinator. And again, on the defensive side of the ball, not a lot of new faces in terms of guys that were portal additions. You know, in so many of these episodes, it's like I did Oklahoma State last week. They only had 2 guys in their whole starting lineup that are not portal in. So it's totally all 11 guys on offense portaled in, 9 on defense portaled in. So it's like a totally new ball game. But defensive line, Francis Breu is one of the guys. One of the D tackles came in from Pitt, and then DJ McKinney, corner, came in from Colorado. The rest of these guys were in the system last year, though, in terms of who were starters on the depth chart I saw. So, in talking about defenses, I usually ask, going back to last year, where were they strong? Where did they struggle? And did they fix the area they struggled at?
Well, ironically, they struggled in the secondary during that game against Texas A&M, and I think there's multiple reasons why. Leonard Moore got hurt in that game. That was huge. He fought through it, battled his butt off out there, but you could just tell. Like, he sprained his ankle. He ended up missing, I think, the next 3 games. Certainly the next 2 games. It might have been 3. So he was fighting through it, and then Christian Gray on the other side, he was also fighting through a shoulder injury that he suffered against Miami. And behind them, they had these true freshmen who the coaching staff clearly did not trust. Oh, and I forgot to mention, their starting nickel hurt his ankle during pregame warmup. So it was just a disaster. So they end up getting shredded. They give up 41 points in that game. That loss ends up costing them a spot in the college football playoff. But going into the season, everyone would have told you the secondary is their biggest strength. As the season progressed, the defense got more comfortable, and they became one of the best defenses in the country, and they returned so much production from that unit this year. So I think you look at the secondary as the obvious strength. Leonard Moore, Breontae Johnson, Adon Schuler, DJ McKinney, and Christian Gray could all realistically be drafted after the season. And Leonard Moore and Breontae Johnson could very well be first-round picks. So they are that deep. Is that going to happen? Probably not. I think McKinney and Gray, we'll see if they're good enough to get drafted after the season.
Moore probably will be a first-round pick.
I feel pretty confident Moore is going to get drafted. It's probably pretty high as well. So that's the strength. The linebackers are incredible. They bring back literally their top 5 tacklers at the position from last season. Kingston Viliamuasa is getting some first-round grades. He might be the best linebacker in the country. Drake Bowen has been their Mike linebacker for the past 2 years. So secondary linebacker look great. Defensive line, they brought in Francis Breu, like you mentioned. They also added Tiona Gray. Like, at the beginning of the offseason, the defensive tackle position was by far the biggest hole on the entire team. Like, it was really concerning. They went out, they got 2 guys in the transfer portal. Then they got some luck in that Jason Onye, who'd been around the program, was granted a 6th year of eligibility due to a medical redshirt. So what looked like it was going to be the biggest weakness ended up getting patched together. But I want to see how those guys look against Wisconsin. It'll be a good test because they're definitely going to try to run the ball. But that is probably the only question I have about this defense. How is the interior going to hold up?
Yeah. One guy I've been impressed with several times I've watched him is Boubacar Traore. Good player. Like at D end, I think he's a good player as well. So, special team wise, another place where they've done well. Good kicking, good punting in the return game. They brought in a kicker in the portal, but it's blanking on me where he was
Spencer
from.
Porath. He was actually at Purdue, and it was one of those deals where he never officially entered the transfer portal. He just dropped out of Purdue, enrolled at Notre Dame, and wouldn't you know it, he's on the football team. So I don't know what the workaround there was about, but oddly enough, Notre Dame hosted Purdue last season, and Spencer Porath drilled 3 field goals all above 40 yards. And for as good as Notre Dame has been on special teams in recent years, Jadarian Price returned 2 kickoffs for a touchdown. They've blocked a bunch of punts during the Marcus Freeman era. That's a huge point of emphasis for him. He really cares about special teams. But for the past 2 seasons, the starting kicker has gotten hurt in back-to-back years. I've never seen a kicker get hurt to begin with, and it's happened now back-to-back years for Notre Dame. And
speaking about your kicker, before Marshall, I did my PhD at South Carolina. I was there with when Mitch Jeter was there, and he's been portaled over. So he was a big loss, and a good addition for you guys. So we're coming in on our half-hour time, Tyler. But one thing I always want to get into, at the end with our guests is the floor and ceiling, for the upcoming season. And I legit feel like you guys are probably one of 2 teams in the country where you can say the ceiling is 12-0. Would you agree with that? I mean, it's possible.
Yeah, I mean, I think the over-under is 11.5, which is pretty crazy. It's heavily juiced to the under. So, I think the under play is minus 175. So that's the safe bet, right? Is that they trip up. Because, look, going undefeated is really, really hard. I don't care how good you are, how easy the schedule is. It's just really tough.
And you have some gimmies. Everybody has some gimmies. But going to BYU is not going to be easy. They're defensively a very stout team. Miami at home, that place is going to be electric for that game, especially if Miami's a top 5 team like we're thinking they could be. SMU is not going to be a team to sleep on. Kevin Jennings is one of the most experienced teams in the country.
That could be a top 15 game because they have SMU has a really easy schedule. Yeah. I think they're going to probably have 1 loss going into that game, and that's second to last game of the regular season. That could have some pretty significant college football playoff implications, but no one's really talking about that because I don't think people realize, one, how good SMU could be, but also just how easy their schedule is.
Yeah. And for you guys, it's also the schedule's not uniform. That first part of it looks pretty easy. Then the 3 losable games we talked about are all the back end of that. So it's, they're bunched together more. But it's one of the things that's tough for me in conceptualizing this episode. A lot of times we always talk about the team's conference and conference contenders, coaches, and all that. Well, we can't really do that now. So, in terms of national, we'll stay with P4. What coach do you think is on the hottest seat?
Not now, but I'll say by the end of the season it'll be Lincoln Riley. And yes, I'm biased.
Okay. If they are a team that ends up with 7 or 8, I think that's in play. But with him, I don't know if it's a Lincoln, you're fired. It might be a, hey, Lincoln, if you want to go take another job, we'll let you in.
Yeah, the Cowboys' offensive coordinator job is open if you want it. No, I mean, I think it's certainly possible. Their schedule is brutal. They should be better than they have been, but I'm with you.
And they were pretty good last year. Yeah.
Yeah, they were. Just the same stuff continues to bite them. I remember I was at that game between Notre Dame and USC last year, and I don't know if it came through on the television. I think they showed it at times. I can't even begin to describe how hard it was raining during that second half. It was pouring.
I remember watching it.
And
and even then,
it was miserable. It was miserable being in the crowd. And yet USC was still running 2 high safeties, just daring Notre Dame to run the ball when they were like, okay, we'll just hand it off to Jeremiah Love. And then he set the single game record for most rushing yards in a game at Notre Dame Stadium. And that stadium's been around since like 1930. Yes. And he just ran all over USC because they're just really light in the trenches. But I don't know. People seem to be pretty high on USC. I'm curious how you feel about them, what your expectations are for them this season. But I am obviously not that high on them.
I think there's a chance they make the playoffs, but I wouldn't pick them in my 12 right now. I think they're probably a 9-win team. It's tough to predict if that will be enough or not. Because, to me, they're in the same boat as Oklahoma, who we mentioned. Good teams, their schedules are brutal, though, so it's tough.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at it right now. I guess they do host Oregon, but, I mean, this stretch right here. Home against Oregon, home against Washington, on the road against Penn State, at Wisconsin, which is not easy, home against Ohio State. Then they have a bye, and then they have to go to Bloomington to take on the Indiana Hoosiers. If they go 3-3 in that stretch, there's probably going to be 3 solid wins in there. But they have to be one of Oregon, Ohio State, or Indiana for me to really consider them as a potential playoff team.
And I don't know if it's a losable game, but I do think the rivalry game, I think UCLA is going to be a lot better than they have been. And and for UCLA, that might be the Super Bowl.
Oh, it will be the Super Bowl. And also, if you think about it, imagine if, let's say they are if they're 7-4 going into that game, and then UCLA wins, I think he's fired.
He's gone.
I think he's gone. Now, if it's 8-3 and then they lose, I think it'll just be a really uncomfortable marriage.
With his buyout, he probably keeps his job at 8-4. But it's a going into 27. You got to do this.
Yeah, there'd be a serious. I think there's a serious cutoff line at 7 wins.
And at 8-4, maybe some coordinators and assistant coaches get fired as sacrificial.
Yeah, they're gonna have to clean house again.
Yeah, but I'm going to ask you one more question as we leave.
Yeah, go ahead.
And for you guys, I think it's very unique. I've asked to my last several guests, if we get off of this call now and Marcus Freeman is no longer your head coach, who do you want hired tomorrow morning to be the Irish's next head coach?
Oof.
It's a tough one. Especially in your guys' case of you're at the elite, so you'd be able to pluck someone who's legit already.
It'd probably have to be someone who's been around the program before. And I think they would definitely try to get an established head coach. Let's see how Vandy does this year.
Yeah.
I think Clark Lee would probably be the first call. He was the Notre Dame defensive coordinator before he got the Vandy job, and he was great.
I do Locked On Vandy once a week with Corey, and I've said before, I think that's the one job he might leave for, potentially.
That would be one. And if not him,
I don't know that Mike Elko would leave.
That's who I was going to say next.
Yeah, financially, A&M would do whatever it took to keep him, I think.
Yeah, and he's got a good thing going down there.
Yeah.
Clark Lee is a fit. Would he be able to recruit as well? I don't know. And also, I don't want to I feel like this happens sometimes in college football where a team has a couple nice seasons, and I'm not I love Clark Lee. I think he was a great defensive coordinator at Notre Dame. I love everything that he stands for. But following up a guy like Marcus Freeman would be it'd be a very difficult act to follow. So they'd have to get someone who not only understands the place, they understand the program, but also know how to acquire talent, because that's the name of the game these days.
And I don't think in this conversation, I think some people might say Tommy Rees. I don't think they hire a first-time head coach.
I would be pretty surprised. Tommy Rees is a polarizing figure in the Notre Dame fan base for sure. I am a fan of his, and
I like him, but that's too big of a first-time job, I think, for most people.
It was a big risk when they did it with Marcus Freeman. He certainly took some bumps along the way, but
he was also there at the time, and was an assistant.
And Marcus Freeman was clearly born to be a head football coach. It was just so obvious. And I think Clark Lee would be the first call. After that, I don't know. Hopefully we don't have to worry about this anytime soon.
Does Al Golden get a call? He was not awful before. He's a coordinator. Yeah.
I think Al Golden is exactly where he wants to be. I think being
Probably.
a defensive coordinator in the NFL, all he has to do is worry about scheme. That dude just loves ball. He
Yeah.
did not really have a big interest in recruiting. Now, he was fine. He was like a personable guy. So when recruits would come around, it wasn't like he was bad, but I think he's exactly where he wants to be.
Move the needle. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I like your idea of they're going to hire someone with a Notre Dame background. It makes logical sense.
Yeah.
But Tyler, thank you for being here. This was a
Of course.
great
Thank you
episode.
for
I'm
having me.
glad we could dive into the Irish. And for all of you viewers out there, Locked on Irish is where you can find him. That'll be tagged in all of our stuff. So thank you, and see you later.